Hey folks, welcome to the Mike Lopez TV Show. I'm your host, AC Mike. We'll bring you all things Atlantic City and our local region. Politics, sports, dining, entertainment, and so much more. On tonight's show, we'll be joined by Gary Musich, President and CEO of Visit Atlantic City, and Daniel Gallagher, Executive Director of Sports and Entertainment. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. We're here with Gary Musich, President and CEO of Visit Atlantic City, and Dan Gallagher, Executive Director of Sports and Entertainment. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. So glad that you're with us.
Good to see you.
Dan, welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
Listen, Gary, man, so happy that you're here and able to join us. We've talked a couple times on air on the ACMike Lopez Show on WOND, but here we are. Listen, introduce yourself to the viewers. Tell them a little bit about yourself as well, please.
So, Gary Musich, lived in Galloway for 25 years. I won't go back too far, but worked for Caesars Entertainment for 15 years under the previous Caesars Entertainment. In 2005, came to the Atlantic City Convention and Visitors Authority. In 2013, we privatized, became Meet AC. And we rebranded that private organization to be Visit Atlantic City, and I want to say that was January of 23. I took a 5-year sabbatical. I came back that spring, and as a Vice President of Sales and Services, and here I am in 2025 as the newly anointed President and CEO after the departure of our previous President, Larry Sieg.
Larry Sieg, there he goes. He's been on the show as well. Listen, we're going to get back to you in a minute. Dan, welcome back again. As I said, introduce yourself, and I see there's a little change to that title as well. Talk to us.
Yeah, Dan Gallagher, Executive Director of Sports and Entertainment. I really cut my teeth. I mean, you know the story. I cut my teeth in Atlantic City. My first job was right across from your condo at Toplitsky's in the Chelsea, and really just, you know, we're still bullish, and you'll hear Gary and I talk about it. You know, my mom played in the casino for 27 years, played the harp. And that's ingrained in who I am as a person. Like Gary said, he's in Galloway. So when Atlantic City is doing well, the region is doing well. And there's not a better feeling in the world, I talk about it all the time, when you see local eateries or retail outlets that are busy because of an event that we brought into the destination.
I love it. And listen, yes, being that neighbor, heard the music, everything that was going on back over the day during the day on Chelsea Avenue there, had tons of fun. Some of the other residents, they have, but I always would tell them, Dan and Gary, you live in a beach town, all right? We got 3 or 4 months to do this and do it right. But you guys are doing it 12 months a year. Gary, talk to us a little bit about the rebranding. I know you touched on it. Big time rebranding, and so important to get the name of the place in that. But go ahead, I'll let you.
So, you know, we'll go back a little bit. You know, so the, you know, through this evolution, you had split up organizations that marketed the city. So you had multiple different brandings, Atlantic City NJ, Meet AC, Do AC. You know, outside of our immediate region, you know, you call that a campaign. People don't know what Do AC means. They you know, with DUAC, MEDAC, and you know, Meet AC and Visit AC until recently was specific to B2B, meetings, trade shows, and events. Now we've combined that effort and Visit Atlantic City after a rebranding. You know, you were a destination. Why call us anything else than who we are and what we want you to do? We want you to visit Atlantic City. So now we've become a multifaceted marketing organization. We recently absorbed or merged with the Leisure Marketing Group, and so now Visit Atlantic City is handling all aspects of marketing for Atlantic City. So it's not only group, it's the Sports Commission, trade shows, events, film commission, group tour, leisure branding, and B2B, the meetings, trade show, and events. We represent currently 52% of all of that business that comes into Atlantic City.
When you say leisure, you know, talk to the folks about that, because we're always thinking about structured. I get that question quite a bit.
So you know, the business is all broken up into a lot of different, right? You have the casino business, you have basic travelers, you have the meeting business, very defined, meetings, trade show, and events. And then you have leisure travelers, people that come down for entertainment. They're coming to enjoy a nice hotel room, a great restaurant, a show, a leisure traveler. We all do. We go to the Poconos, we go skiing, we go to Hawaii. We travel as individuals or as couples or as groups. A different group did that. That's why branding is important, why that's part of all of this. We needed to talk. We haven't talked to that group directly in a long, long time. We haven't done things like know who our customer is that comes from that aspect. It wasn't Visit Atlantic City's responsibility at the time, but now it is, because we're all on the same page about where and how we talk about the city. And we talk about the brand and what's the message of what we want you to do. We want you to visit Atlantic City. So we want our name in our messaging, and that's how you'll see it presented from this point on. Talk a little bit further about that. As part of this plan, we launched our new website January 14th, multifaceted website. For the first time in, I think, Dan, 10 or 12 years, yep. You can actually now go to that website and book a room. There's a booking engine on it. So our entire campaign to rebrand and talk more about what's going on in Atlantic City, that was launched just recently. So you're starting to see some of that come up, whether it's in billboards, commercials, a lot of digital advertising. You can look at restaurants, you can look at entertainment options, you can look at sporting events, you can look like the boat show is just in. Dan may talk a little bit more about that, but you can find anything you want at visitatatlanticcity.com as a visitor. And we want to know who you are and what you like as a visitor, separate from all these different segments. We can start talking in a positive way about what's going on in Atlantic City.
So important. Again, we've heard it through the years, and I know you're alluding to it and touching on it. Where do I find this? I didn't even know, or you hear it all the time, whether it's a social media post, radio, or whatever we may do, a personal post. I didn't know that was going on, but to do it the way you're doing and rebranding it and launching that website, I think, again, it's groundbreaking, and it seems simple, not rocket science, but it took someone and a group to do it, and you did it, and thank you so much for that.
Right.
Dan, when Gary's talking about sports and whatnot, I know we've talked about it quite a bit in the sense that the traditional sports, one of the things that you bring, again, walking into arm wrestling events, pole vaulting, I could go on and on. I always go back to pole vaulting on the boardwalk. But that is so important too, because Gary alluded to as well. Families coming in, not so much the conventions and whatnot, folks coming in, wow, this is going on, or maybe they did get the word out beforehand with Visit Atlantic City. Talk to us about that.
I think the important thing to know about our organization is we're a business development and economic development driver, right? And I think everyone knows how many sleeping rooms we have in Atlantic City. Everyone knows about our casinos and our restaurants. But we don't look at a convention any different than we look at a sporting event, right? At the end of the day, there's still an economic driver to our region. People are using either their corporate card for the meetings or trade shows, or they're using their own personal card to come down here for a sporting event. And Gary touched on who that traveler is. We didn't know who that was for a while. So we're doing a full visitor profile to get a better understanding of, if they haven't been here, why? And what can we do better as a destination to attract more people here? So that wasn't the same way for a while. We don't have that infrastructure that most sports destinations have. So we have to be creative in what we attract and what we bring to the destination. So we use our topography. We use Bader Field. We use the boardwalk. We use beach, convention center, boardwalk hall, our endless ballroom space that we have in our 9 casinos. So you have to be creative about what actually makes sense for the destination. And we've done a really good job of taking a step back and saying, what does that look like for our not only our travelers but our attendees.
And Dan, if I could just jump in, Mike, real quick on that. But if you look at how the event business has changed, right? COVID shut the event business down. And when I say events is all events. It's not just B2B events, meetings, trade shows, events, public sporting events, triathlons. Youth sports is also part of the commission and Sports Commission's effort and Dan's effort. And those events in the Convention Center and Boardwalk Hall propped up those buildings coming out of COVID. And I always say, the trade show business came back later than that. And Dan has the numbers on what parents put into that sports for their children and the demographic of that. But there's an argument there to say that type of event, that new segment, really propped up and kind of saved the business in the convention center. There's a lot to be said for that. And how many people attended events last year?
111,000. And Gary always brings that up, and I simplify it and I say, I think the reason that trade shows and conventions came back a little bit slower is because of the ease of access of virtual meetings, right? So you're allowed to go on Zoom. What I like to say is, I can't play you in basketball on Zoom now, right? So, and also for the students and the youth athlete, they need that camaraderie. They need to get out of the house and exercise. So, and going back to, Gary brought up some of the numbers. The average mean for a family to support 2 kids in sports needs to have a salary of $250,000, and they're putting $30,000 of that into sports. When I played sports, you played for your high school team, and that was it. Now you play for your club team, your travel team, your AAU team, and if you have time, you play for your high school team. These are affluent people, affluent demographics that are coming into our destination, and like I said before, they're the ones that are in your casinos and at your restaurants when the kids are in sports.
I love it. And listen, it's a great visual. I mean, as we're taping this tonight, in the next week or so, we'll have the New Jersey State Championships, wrestling championships coming in, 8, 9, 10,000 a night a session, as well as going through Tanger outlets. And when you see the kids with basketballs or volleyballs or the cheerleaders, one of the sites that I didn't think that I would see in Atlantic City. I mean, and again, it's been here, and I've been telling folks that, but I'm so glad the two of you are touch on it, Gary.
So what happens? This business is all a blend of these things. So let's look at what's happened just in the past 30 days, and we're going to isolate the convention center because I like to talk about that our business in the first 2 months of the year is up. Our new business is up 30%, but you had the pool and spa show. Right. It's now the largest pool and spa show business to business, right? Contractors, manufacturers in the entire United States. Then you follow that up with smaller events, the boat show, youth sports. It's how you make this building and other buildings in the city work. You can't have your eggs in one basket. You got to blend it. It's like putting a puzzle together. How do you make this work? And it's still all about how do we drive economic development in the city and economic impact. Collectively, all this business that just came from Visit Atlantic City was $315 million in 2024 for Atlantic City. And that doesn't include the individual property programs.
This segment, Dan, again, the sports, youth, as well as professional. We're going to nail down on the next segment some of the events that are coming in April, spring, as well as summer. It's very important to the men and women. I mean, we think about it, it used to be, and, the fights and this and that and whatnot. Listen, it's a different demographic right now. Again, and I hate saying the C word, COVID, what happened and how we had to come back. But one thing I noticed, you did not stop. You continued to roll. That is so important. And we just have to get that word out to the folks out there, what's going on.
Well, you bring up a good point. Sports is such a unique animal in and of itself, right? And on the radio show the other day, I brought up that they're calling this the decade of sports. $607 billion of what sports tourism is being spec'd at right now. They're expecting that to be $1.8 trillion by 2030. There's a lot of factors that go into that. I say call it the Caitlin Clark effect. We had 3,000 female wrestlers at states last year. 3,000. You would have never seen that a couple of years ago. Then you have what the NCAA is doing with taking that Bible that they have for all these years and throwing it out the window. And I always say you don't have to be that 0.0001% that makes on the professional sports. You can now be that 13, 15, 16% that these children are getting serious endorsements by colleges and universities to go use their NIL, their name, image, and likeness there. So you're starting to see an evolution of what sports is as a market segment. And to Gary's point, 10 years ago, it was more of a filler market. Right. And now it's been something that we can really rest our laurels on and say it's a real market.
Brilliant guy right here because he realized what sports does. But we're also going to tie in next segment some of the conventions that are coming in town and then some of the fights as well. Folks, stay right where you're at. We'll be right back. Listen, it's the real deal here. Visit AC, Dan Gallagher, Gary Musich. Stick around. Welcome back. We're here with Gary Musich, President and CEO of Visit Atlantic City, and Dan Gallagher, Executive Director of Sports and Entertainment. Gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight. Stockton University, love it here. Economic impact, Atlantic City, Atlantic County, and throughout. Gary, hit us on that.
So I'm going to go back for a second. So if you look at, I'm going to talk a little bit about our campaign launch and how that's different from what we've done before. So right now, we talked about Visit Atlantic City as our new website and our new social media channels that we've launched January 14th on the new website. And if you look at that and you look at things you're seeing now, commercials, branding, and messaging, you see something that's a little bit different. You see things about our region. You see us talking about wineries and golf and ecotourism and Atlantic City and beaches and fishing and all these other things that encompass what we're doing here, because one of the goals is to extend your stay in Atlantic City, and the economic impact that creates is monumental. 70% of the people that stay in Atlantic City stay just for one night. Our campaign and goal is to make that 2 nights. Imagine what that does to a city like Atlantic City. Where it is now, like our group business that we track, is just what Visit Atlantic City does is over $300 million. If you look at the market, it's probably $500 to $600 million in economic impact to the city. It's about 1 million people. And if you look at how does that compare to other cities, we have some challenges. You don't have an airport here. Airport's far away. Yet we're bigger than most cities that are much bigger than us. Pittsburgh, we're comparable. We're bigger than Providence. We're bigger than Baltimore. We're bigger than Richmond. We're getting close to a city like Philadelphia. There's something to be said for that. With challenges we've had post-COVID and all these things everybody still talks about, the reality is that this is a bigger and more important part of Atlantic City's mix of business than it ever has been. Even once upon a time, and everybody probably 95% of the rooms in Atlantic City are occupied by a gaming customer. Now it's between 55 and 60%. That changes everything. That changes why you come here, where you eat, what you do, and what you're interested in, which is why our campaign now calls for kind of a broader interest in things that are in not just Atlantic City, but Atlantic County.
Right, and when you talk about that, Dan, and I'll go to both of you on this, and I want to hear from the two of you. You said Atlantic County, but also you're going over the bridge. You mentioned Philadelphia. I mean, with the World Cup and some of these other events coming in, I mean, that's a definite, going to attract folks to Atlantic City. Am I wrong?
Let Dan take that one.
Yeah, and just to go back to Gary's point real quick, and obviously it's all about economic development, but we've done a really concerted effort towards giving back to our community as well, right? And Gary talks about this all the time. We used to go buy 50-cent water bottles and put our logo on. Instead of doing that, now we're partnering with Mud Girls to give back to the community. We're involved in the Gilda's Race or the Alzheimer's Walk, because at the end of the day, you have to give back to the community, and the community will give back to you. So we've really taken that approach head on, and instead of when we have our fam trips, when we have clients come in, we're now giving credits away to these people and having speakers come in because there's value in that. There's intrinsic value in that. And that's what I think is really separating us from what maybe our older model looked like. As you mentioned about World Cup, if you would have asked me that we'd be hosting a FIFA World Cup team in Atlantic County, I would have thought you were crazy. And not only that, we're hosting Brazil's #1 team, CR Flamengo, and they're using Stockton University here in Galloway, and then they're being housed in Atlantic City. Those kind of events really are platforms for us to get brand awareness out there. Is the economic impact always there? No, but we're getting our name out there on a world national stage, and that has to be taken into consideration as well.
No, love it.
And I think on the World Cup issue, the average time period a traveler will be in the United States is 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and there's a lot of downtime there. The benefit of the team staying in Atlantic City is this is their home base, so they're going to stay and travel to and from. So there's significant value just in that. But now we're looking at and talking to World Cup about what events, live events, things, sponsored events, and other things that can go on, and how do we connect the visitor with that ancillary trip where you stay in Atlantic City and because you have all this time and you have 2 or 3 days in Atlantic City. Now we've exposed a new traveler to Atlantic City, and now our brand is out there, and now you have this domino effect of information that gets out there about somebody's experience in Atlantic City. And I think that's how Dan touched on it. We got to talk about not just the rooms and space and this, but who are we? And I think that's really important that when we talk to people that want to use the city, they get to know who they are, because it's really easy in this day and age to find this information out. Where do I want to stay? What kind of restaurants? What's the meeting space? I want to do the event. I want to do this and do that. But if you connect on that personal level, whether it's Alzheimer's or, the New Jersey hosts the biggest suicide prevention week walk in the state. Atlantic City, 3,200 people did that last year. That changes the conversation. And that's how this all kind of comes together, where now you have a common interest when you're talking to potential customers of the city, and you connect just on a different level. That's why our campaign is broadening to include these other things.
And I love it. And again, to just go back to it, the community, one of the things near and dear to my heart, what got me involved and doing what I'm doing sitting here was just getting involved in the community. And what Dan said, and you piggybacked on it too, Gary, is so important. You know, not just the Atlantic City community, the Atlantic County community, and the folks that come in when you're talking about that suicide walk. I've done it several years. You know, there are people from all over the area. And what I love as I'm sitting here talking to you, each time we sit and talk, is that you're thinking out of the box. I mean, your guys are definitely, and gals on your team are thinking out of the box, you know, and being proactive. I mean, you're talking World Cup, you're talking numbers, that sort of thing. So that proactive, being able to foresee, but also take care of what needs to be taken care of here. Talk to about, because when you have a convention, it's not something that gets signed 6 months out, or, you know.
Not at all.
Well, you know what? So good point. So some things that we were working on. So we actually, you know, we talk about pace. Pace is how far out the business goes, and that's the health of event and group business. We just booked a 10,000 room convention for 2032, American Bus Association. They were in Philadelphia this year. In collaboration with the state of New Jersey, we hosted a big event at the Camden Aquarium. They're going to be here in 2032, and they announced Atlantic City as their selection of that 2032 of that year for Atlantic City. So that's how far out we're looking to push business. And once upon a time, there wouldn't have been an interest in looking that far out in the city. It was a very short-term buying cycle. But we had a concentrated effort to push that out, because the further out you go with that, the higher demand and value the existing space is. And that's our approach to this right now. And as we get our name out there more, and look, the meeting business, the event business, the meeting and the sports commission business is one of the bright spots. There's a lot of bright spots in Atlantic City, but that business grew last year. It grew at 8%. You know, not every segment is growing right now. That's one that has grown, and it's finite and definitive. And now we're branching into the event business, which it should be a role of Visit Atlantic City. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Ennis fight. So I'm going to jump in, and I'll let Dan jump in here in a second. But there's an event that is probably the biggest fight in the past decade. Philadelphia guy, unification fight. That if handled right, and this is how the event, you got to make quick decisions on this. When the opportunity is there, you strike. From inception to completion, 2.5 weeks. In collaboration with our partners at Boardwalk Hall, we booked this fight. And now our name is all over the place. And I'm going to let Dan jump on this because he's dealing with it. Matchroom's the promoter. Dan, talk a little bit more about it.
Matchroom, so there's a history there. Gary brings up a good point when it comes to looking at pieces of business and how far out we go. Our buying cycles are usually about 18 months, right, Gary? But, you know, we hosted DAV, Disabled American Veterans. We signed that in 2014. It just came 2 years ago, right? I didn't know where I was going to be, you know, 8 years later. But to Gary's point, if you want to win these, whether it's a big sporting event or a big convention, you have to be nimble. You have to be able to adapt because these people want to make the decisions and they want to feel good about making the decision. That's the big part. So when you come in and you have your facts already in order and you feel confident in your decision making, that's what helps you win some of these fights. And this WBF, IBF unification fight that Gary mentioned is a partnership with Matchroom. And I think that the reason they do trust us is because we host the U.S. Nine-Ball Open at Harris. So there's a history there and there's a familiarity there that people want to do business with people that they know.
Love it. Listen, and you just touched on it. I believe it was Hopkins, the last big fight. As you know, we've been having a resurgence of stuff. Sort of, I like to call club fighting, which is great. But these big fights in the main room is something that is like any other thing that goes on in Atlantic City. I've really said, and it's been some time. And I actually got to meet Bernard that time he was here in town. Just he was walking through the pier, looking for sneakers. And one of the things he said was that Atlantic City is a fight town. And, you know, this is a guy that's fought all over the world, and I've heard it from others as well. You know, do you see, I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything like that, because I know it's it's hard to do, so to speak. But fights, the hall being used the way in sports and different shows as well. I mean, we get it all the time. It needs to be used more. You know, I think that there's plenty
good
there, but
questions.
yeah.
So I'd love to touch on that. So, you know, again, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. Dan said it. You have to be nimble when the opportunity comes up, and you can look at all the event business sort of the same way. When the opportunity is there to bid, you jump at it. If you don't, and you have a long process that goes through to say, can we or can't we, and where do we find the financing for it, because everything is subsidized, that's how it works, and you hope to make your money back on the P&L out of the event. We took a chance on the Ennis fight. Visit Atlantic is sort of out of our lane, but we said, hey, we have a shot here. If we don't, this goes to Atlanta. And it was really that simple. You did it, and you had to do it then. And there's a lot of opportunity for Atlantic City, whether it's entertainment, concerts, sporting events that Dan works on, conventions that our sales team is working on. When the bid is there and the opportunity is there, you have to be prepared to be nimble and react and have a plan in place to do it. Otherwise, somebody's right behind you to take that from you. Right. And that's what we have to be very focused on doing that going forward. And that's how we grow this business. Being nimble, having a focus on events, having a focus and plan in place, and a solicitation and being proactive about what works in Atlantic City, what works for the casino and hotel properties, and what works for expanding this new market that we're creating in Atlantic County.
And if I could jump in for a second, Gary brings up a good point. We don't, one and dones don't make sense in our business at all, right? So we want to make sure that when we do make a decision on something, it's long term. And I can tell you that in our negotiations with Matchroom, this is not going to, the plan is for it not to be one fight and go away. And you see that with all of our annual events. You know, some of these shows have been around for 20, 25 years in Adrian Phillips or in Boardwalk Hall or in the Convention Center. A lot of money, a lot of time goes into these things. So we always want to make sure they're successful for both. It has to be successful for the client, it has to be successful for the destination too.
And those relationships last for
Correct.
years. And that's how it comes back around, and why content and discussion and relationship is important, because you know, we start working on this 9-ball, what happens? There's a relationship, now we have first shot at something else, and it turns out to be a giant fight.
Can't wait till it to happen. Going to be there. And listen, one of the things that we do here on the ACMike Show here at Stockton University Comcast is put it out there live and local. We appreciate the two of you. Gary Musich, President and CEO, Visit Atlantic City. My man, Sports and Entertainment, Dan Gallagher. Thank you so much both for joining us. And we're going to continue, again, this conversation. Folks, stay right where you're at. We'll be right back. Hey, folks, it's our belief here at the Mike Lopez TV Show that you, the viewers, and our guests bring the show to life. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us. To learn more about ACMike, go to acmikej.com. On Facebook, ACMike, Mike Lopez, and Live, Work, Play AC. On Instagram, you can find me as well at ACMikeNJ. And if you enjoyed watching today's show, you can also listen to my radio show on 1400 and 92.3 WONDradio.com, Monday through Friday, noon till 1 p.m. And always remember to live, work, play AC, and I'll see you on the 48.